They are short Radha Madhav. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodhanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayeshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Patir Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshuronmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namavom Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. This will begin the fourth canto, 29th chapter. It's not like a screen sharing, this thing, because I'm not doing PPT sharing. Zoom. I don't have internet here. Okay, I'll put a hotspot then. Hotspot. I'll. What is the ID? Screen sharing permission. Acha. Okay. So we'll begin the fourth canto, 29th chapter. प्राचीनबर्हिरुवाच भगवंस्तेव चोऽस्माभिर्न सम्यगवगम्यते कवयस्तद्विजानन्ति न वयं कर्म मोहिताः.
King Prachinbarhi replied, "My dear Lord, we could not appreciate completely the purport of your allegorical story of King Purañjana. Actually, those who are perfect in spiritual knowledge can understand, but for us who are overly attached to fruitive activities to realize the purpose of your story is very difficult."
Bhagavan is addressing Prachina Barishad. He's addressing Narada Muni. Te vachaha asmabir na samyag avagamyate. Whatever you have spoken, te means tava. Your words, asmabihi, by us, na samyag avagamyate. I'm unable to understand it properly or completely. Kavayaha tad vijananti. Great kavis, learned people, they will be able to understand. Na vayam karma mohitaha. Because I'm absorbed in the karma kanda sacrifices, are bewildered by the fruitive activities. Na vayam, we are unable to understand it. The meaning of your allegorical story completely. So here we see in this particular chapter, Prachina Barishad. What is the summary of this chapter? Sridhar Swami explains in 2 shlokas. Sridhar Swami says in 1 shloka, Unatrimshe parokshartha. It's not coming. Duplicate. Yeah. Zoom it comes. Okay. So Sridhar Swami says that Unatrimshe in the 29th chapter, parokshartha vyakyayena upasamhritam स्त्री संगतो भवस तो ईश संगान मुक्ति रीति स्फुटम. So upasamhrita means ending. So parokshartha vyakyayena. So this allegorical story which was spoken using the parokshavada, so Narada Muni is going to explain the meaning behind the or purport behind the allegorical story, and then he will conclude it. And the essence of this chapter is that Sri Sangato Bhavaha. Because of association with the women, a living entity remains in the material existence. Isha Sangan Muktir. By association with the Supreme Lord, a person attains mukti. Krishna Chakotipad says that Yekona Trimshake Adhyatma Paksha Vyakhyanam Uchyate. Karma Prashnottaram Rajño Vairagyartam Katha Para. Adhyatma Paksha Vyakhyanam Uchyate. So Adhyatma Paksha Vakhyanam. So Narada Muni is going to explain the spiritual side, the spiritual meaning of this Vyakhyana, the Purañjana story. Karma Prashnottaram Rajño Vairagyartam Katapara. So Karma Prashnottaram Rajño. Prachina Parishad is actually raising questions about the Karma Kanda. Allah, there are questions, you'll see that the later part of this chapter, some questions were asked by Prachina Parishad about the transmigration of the soul and about the fruitive activities. So Narada Muni is explaining the meaning of this allegorical story in order to arouse a spirit of renunciation in Prachina Parishad and take shelter of Krishna. So in the Gita also Krishna says, Tribir Gunamayer Bhavir Yebi Sarvam Idam Jagat Mohitam Nabi Janati Karmabir Nasabhadyate. Mohitam Nabi Janati Mamebhya Paramavyayam. How the living entity Prabhupada is quoting this shloka in connection with the word Navayam Karma Mohitaha. Also in the second chapter, Krishna says that Yamimam Pushpitam Vacham Pravadantyavipashchitaha Vedavada Ratapartha Nanyat Astiti Vadinaha Kamatmana Swargapara Janma Karma Falapradam Kriya Vishesha Bahulam Bhogaishwarya Gatim Prati. Bhogaishwarya Prasaktanam Taya Apakrita Chetasam Vyavasayatmika Buddhi Samadhavana Vidiyate. Bhogaishwarya Prasaktanam, those who are attached to Bhoga and Aishwarya, in such people, the resolute determination for bhakti does not take place. So, we see there are different types of questions asked in the Shastra. Some questions are Swahita Prashna. Some questions are questions which are asked with one's own certain confusion or one's own benefit in mind. Swahita Prashna. Some questions are Parahita Prashna. Questions which are asked with the desire to benefit others. The sages asked questions in the first canto of the Bhagavatam. Some of the questions are Parahita Prashna. Parishit Maharaj asked that how can the people in the hell be delivered? Parahita Prashna. Vidura asked a question. Sukaya Karmani Karoti Loko. That people are performing fruitive activities, how can they attain real happiness? Parahita Prashna. Dhruva Maharaj asked a question which is a Swahita Prashna. And then there are Vishaya Shodaka Prashna. Vishaya Shodaka Prashna means a particular subject matter is spoken, but in order to bring out a greater clarity of that subject matter, a question is asked. Vishaya Shodaka Prashna. So this question of Prachina Parishad can be seen in that category. Vishaya Shodaka Prashna. There are also other questions. Prasanga Prashna. Some questions are related to a particular prasanga. Yeah, particular. Some question can come under multiple categories. This question can be seen as a Vishaya Shodhaka Prashna and also as a Prasanga Prashna. And there are also other types of question. Swahit, Prasanga Prashna, Kanduti Prashna, Nirartaka Prashna, Darpa Prashna, or Ati Prashna. Sometimes people ask in a public forum, somebody asks a question about one's personal life, which may not be little inappropriate. Ati Prashna. There are many questions are there. So this question can be classified as Vishaya Shodhaka Prashna and also as a Prasanga Prashna, question related to the topic under discussion. So we see that in this particular chapter, Prachina Parishad is honestly saying that I couldn't understand the purport behind this story. So sometimes we may hear a particular story, but we shouldn't be satisfied simply hearing that story, but we should know the purport or the meaning behind the story. So sometimes people are just satisfied to hear a particular joke or a story, but one should go beyond that. One should remember the purport behind the story. Next shloka. So in response, from the second shloka till the 25th shloka, Narada Muni gives the purport behind the story. What the different characters in the story, what do they represent? Because Prabhupada had explained these things. Prabhupada had been giving the purport of the story right from the beginning. Prabhupada is more merciful. He gives the meaning. He gave the meaning in the 25th chapter itself, all along. But here, from the point of view of the narration of the Bhagavatam, Narada Muni is giving the purport behind the story here after the question of Prachina Parishad. Narada Uvacha Purusham Puranjanam Vidyad Yadvanakyatmana Puram Ekadvitri Chatushpadam Bahupadama Padakam.
The great sage Narada Muni continued, "You must understand that Puranjan, the living entity, transmigrates according to his own work into different types of bodies, which may be one-legged, two-legged, three-legged, four-legged, many-legged, or simply legless. Transmigrating into these various types of bodies, the living entity, a so-called enjoyer, is known as Puranjana."
Purusham. Puranjanam Purusham Vidyat. Puranjana refers to the living entity. Understand this. And then this living entity, Ekapadam, Dvipadam, Tripadam, Chatushpadam, Bahupadam, or Apadakam. This living entity sometimes accepts a body of one leg or two legs or three legs or many legs, or sometimes without a leg. Yad Vyanakti. Vyanakti, the Acharyas say that Vyanakti means Sridhar Swami says that Prakatayati, or one commentary it is mentioned that Swakarmana Prakatayati. So the living entity accepts these bodies according to his karma. A body with one pada, two pada, three pada, etc. Vyanakti means Swakarmana Prakatayati. According to his karma, he accepts. So Prabhupada is explaining that in the purport. Next shloka. Yo vigyata hritastasya purushasya sakeshwarah yanna vigyayate pumbhir namabirva kriyagunaihi.
The person I have described as unknown is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master and eternal friend of the living entity. Since the living entities cannot realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by material names, activities, or qualities, he remains everlastingly unknown to the conditioned soul.
Yaha avijnata. Avijnata, which was mentioned in the 28th chapter. I think previously also it is mentioned. Avijnata. Who is that Avijnata? Purushasya Saka. He is the friend of the living entity and he is nothing but Ishvara. Purushasya Sakeshvaraha. Yan na Vijnayate Pumbir Namabirva Kriya Gunaihi. Na Vijnayate Pumbir Namabirva Kriya Gunaihi. One cannot understand the name, qualities and activities of the Avijnata by one's own effort. So Prabhupada quotes in the purport, only by bhakti a person can understand the position of Avijnata, who is the Parameshwara. Bhaktyamam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tatvatah. Or the Upanishad says that avan manasa gochara, who is beyond the mind and words. Or Padma Puran says that Atap Pumbir, no, Ata Shri Krishna Namadi Na Bhaved Grahyam Indriyai Sevon Mukehi Jighvado Swayam Eva Swaratyadaha. How one cannot understand the name, form, qualities, and passions of the Supreme Lord are beyond. They cannot be understood with one's material senses. So these are quoted in relation to the second part of the shloka. Yanna Vijnayate Pumbir Namabirva Kriya Gunaihi. Therefore, one of the name of Krishna is called as Adokshaja, beyond the sense perception. Beyond the sense perception. So these points are mentioned in relation to the word, in relation to the second part of the shloka. So also, if we see in the later part of the purport, Prabhupada says that although there are thousands of names of Vishnu, the Karmis and Jnanis intermingle the names of the Supreme Lord with the names of the Devatas and the human beings. Because they cannot understand the actual name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they take for granted that any name can be accepted. They believe that since the absolute truth is impersonal, they can call him by any name. Otherwise, they maintain he has no name. So we see that sometimes people, they intermingle the names of the different devatas with Vishnu, or they give the equal position to the Supreme Lord and with the same as other devatas. So that is called as a reflective semblance of faith. There are different types of Shraddha Abhasa. There are different types of Shraddha Abhasa. One is a reflective semblance of faith. The reflective semblance of faith, sometimes people, they think the Devatas equal to Vishnu. So then they worship Devatas and Vishnu indiscriminately, thinking that the Devatas, like the Lord, can bestow pure devotion or love. Next shloka. The Narada explains the city of 9 gates. Yada jigrkshan purushaha Katsyena prakritergunan Navadvaram dvihastangri Tatra manuta sadviti.
When the living entity wants to enjoy the modes of material nature in their totality, he prefers out of many bodily forms to accept that body which has 9 gates, 2 hands, and 2 legs. Thus, he prefers to become a human being or a demigod.
So, Purushaha, living entity, Yada Jigrukshan, when he desires to enjoy, Prakriter Gunan Katsyena, when he desires to enjoy the three gunas of material nature completely. So at that time, Navadvaram Dvihastangri. So this body which is having the Navadvara, the human body, Dvihastangri, having 2 legs and two hands. Tatra Amanuta Sadhu iti Amanuta. This human body is the best. The living entity thinks that, oh, this human body, when the living entity desires to enjoy the material nature completely, he thinks that, oh, this human body, which is having the 9 gates, this is the perfect instrument. He considers like that. Sadhu iti amanuta. So therefore, Prabhupada in the purport, he compares the human body with the other. So before that, first he says that what actually keeps the living entity bound to this material world is the desire to enjoy. Ichha dvesha samuttena dvandvamohena bharata sarvabhutani sammoham sarge yanti parantapa. Ichha and dvesha, because of that a person is remains in this world of duality. And so the desire of the living entity, how the desire to enjoy independently from Krishna. Sometimes a person may be born in a very cultured family of the Aryans. But although a person is born in such a family, one desires to enjoy, one desires to explore the world outside. A living entity desires to enjoy independently from God. So a particular type of animal may have a strong, then he says that how this different bodies of the animals, some particular faculty may be very strong. A particular type of animal may have a strong tendency to enjoy one kind of sense enjoyment. But in the human body, one can enjoy all the senses. The human form has a facility to utilize all the senses for gratification. So therefore, the living entity considers the human body the best opportunity to enjoy. So, next shloka, Narada Muni explains that the women which Purañjana met. Buddhim tu pramadam vidyan mamaham iti yatkritam yam adishthaya dehesmin puman bhungte kshabir gunan.
The great sage Narad continued. The word pramada mentioned in this regard refers to material intelligence or ignorance. It is to be understood as such. When one takes shelter of this kind of intelligence, he identifies himself with the material body. Influenced by the material consciousness of I and mine, he begins to enjoy and suffer through his senses. Thus, the living entity is entrapped.
So the pramada, who is that pramada which Purañjana met? That refers to buddhi. So buddhi, Acharya say, buddhi refers to material intelligence or ignorance. The pramada refers to ignorance. And mamaham iti yat krita, living entity, because of coming in contact with the ignorance, mama aham, he is absorbed in the conception of me and mine. Yam adhishtaya dehesmin puman bhunkte akshabir gunan. Aksha refers to the senses. And with his different senses, he tries to enjoy the sense objects. Bhunkte gunan. Gunan bhunkte. So Prabhupada says that he is quoting the real buddhi is the transcendental intelligence. Tesham satatayuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhiyogam tam yenamam upayantite. Real intelligence means to link with the Supreme Lord. When a person links with the Supreme Lord, the Lord gives the real intelligence. That intelligence is that by which a person returns home back to God. But because of the material intelligence or the ignorance, one is absorbed in the conception of me and mine. I am the monarch of all that I survey. Like that a person thinks. Janasya mohoyam aham mameti. And in order to purify this material intelligence, the process given is Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. By performing Shri Krishna Sankirtanam, what happens? Cheto Darpana Marjanam. The ignorance is removed. A person gets real intelligence. So we see the concept of me and mine is so prominent. One devotee went to give class in Nepal. He was giving a Ramayana class. And one high official from Nepal, he asked the devotee, why did Ram banish our Nepali girl? Sita was born in Nepal. Why did Ram banish our Nepali girl? Well, even when they are hearing spiritual discourse, the concept of me and mine is so prominent, the questions are also flavored with that me and mine. So, and the next shloka, Narada Muni talks about the different friends of that, the different male friends and the female friends along with that Puranjani. Sakaya Indriyagana Jnanam Karma Yacha Yatkritam Sakyastad Vrittaya Prana Panchavrittiryatorakah.
The five working senses and the five senses that acquire knowledge are all male friends of Puranjani. The living entity is assisted by these senses in acquiring knowledge and engaging in activity. The engagements of the senses are known as girlfriends, and the serpent, which was described as having five heads, is the life air acting within the five circulatory processes.
Sakaya Indriyagana Jnanam Karma Cha Yatkritam. So the Indriyagana, the friends of that particular Puranjani or Pramada refers to the Indriyagana, the five senses. They are the male friends. And Sakya Stad Vrittaya Prana. Sakya, the female friends. Sakya here refers to female friends. It refers to the Tad Vrittaya. The activities of the senses are compared to the female friends. The female friends represent the activities of the senses, tad vrittayah. And jnanam karma cha yat kritam. With these senses, a person attains the knowledge and performs different activities. Jnanendriyas and karmendriyas. Acquires knowledge and also perform different activities. And then in the story, there was also a five-hooded snake was mentioned. Panchavrittir yatorakaha. The five-hooded snake represents the prana, the life years. The life years. So Prabhupada says that the senses are the instruments for enjoying the material world. Therefore, the senses are described as the friends. Sometimes, because of too much sinful activity, a person gets a ghostly body in which there are no senses. A person has a lot of desires, but there is no opportunity to fulfill those desires, or he cannot try to enjoy those desires. So he creates a great trouble in a subtle body. Utkramantam sthitam vapi bunjanam va gunanvitam vimuda nanu pashyanti jnana chakshusha. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. So there is prana, apana, udana, vyana, samana. These are the different life years. They are compared to the five-hooded serpent. Next shloka. Brihadbalam mano vidyad ubayendriya nayakam panchala pancha vishaya yanmadye navakampuram.
Seventh attendant, who is the commander of the others, is known as the mind. He is the leader of the senses, both in the acquisition of knowledge and in the performance of work. The Panchala kingdom is that atmosphere in which the five sense objects are enjoyed. Within that Panchala kingdom is the city of the body, which was 9 gates.
Ubayendriya nayakam. Ubaya indriya nayakam. For both these types of senses, karmendriyas and jnanendriyas, there is a nayaka, leader. Who is that? Mind. And that mind is brihad balam. Understand that mind to be of highly powerful. Panchala pancha vishaya. So he goes to the city of Panchala, the kingdom called Panchala, that refers to the five sense objects. Yanmadye navakampuram. Yanmadye navakampuram. While living in that city of 9 doors, he goes to a city called as Panchala, which refers to the five sense objects. So the mind is very powerful. Avanti Brahmana says in 11th canto, Mano vashenye kyabhavam swadeva manascha nanyasya vasham sameti Bhishmo hi deva sahasa sahiyan yunjad vashetam sahi deva devaha. Mano vashenye kyabhavam swadeva. All the senses have been under the control of mind since time immemorial. And manascha na anyasya vasham sameti. And the mind is not under the control of anybody. Bhishmo hi deva sahasa sahiyan. Bhishma. Mind is very fearsome, stronger. It is stronger than the Sahasa Sahiyan. It is stronger than the strongest, and its godlike power is very fearsome. And Yunjyad Vashetam, one who brings the mind under control, Sahi Deva Devaha. He is truly the master of all the senses. So in the Bhagavad Gita also, Arjuna says that Chanchalam hi manak Krishna pramati balavadridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva sudushkaram. So Chanchala, the mind is very chanchala, flickering like a monkey. You can't predict in which direction the monkey will actually jump. Pramati, the mind is very brazen, like a mad elephant. It can completely uproot the entire tree. Balavad, mind is very powerful, like a bull. There's a jallikat. I don't know what the Hindi word is called. Bullfight. Krishna also conquered different bulls to marry, I think, Nagna Jiti, I think. So even the most powerful person, he can, how long can he sit on a bull? Only for a few seconds. The mind is balavad, is powerful like a bull. Dridam, mind is obstinate like the tail of a dog. Even if you keep that tail of a dog straight for 2 hours, as soon as you leave it, it will come to the same curly position. So mind is very powerful. Therefore, Prabhupada says that, Prabhupada is quoting that, Bandhuratmat manastasya yenat maivatmana jitah anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvat. If one gets a good manager, his estate is very nicely managed. But if the manager is a thief, his estate is spoiled. So similarly, in the conditioned life, the living entity gives the power of attorney to the bad manager called mind. But rather, one should give the power of attorney to the good manager. That means one should engage the mind in the service of Krishna. Savai mana Krishna padaravindayor vachamsi vaikunta gunanu varnane. So, and then further, Narada says, he describes the 9 gates. Akshini nasike karnau mukam shishna gudaviti dve dve dvarau bahiryati yastadindriya samyutah.
The eyes, nostrils, and ears are pairs of gates situated in one place. The mouth, genitals, and rectum are also different gates. Being placed into a body having these 9 gates, living entity acts externally in the material world and enjoys sense objects like form and taste.
So, Akshini Nasike Karnau, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, and the 2 ears, Mukam and Shishna Guda. So, totally there are 9 gates are there. Dve Dve Dvarau Bahiryati Yastat Indriya Samyutah. So, with these different senses, a person is to enjoy the sense objects like form and taste. So, not being aware of the spiritual position, the living entity directed by the mind, goes out through the 9 gates to enjoy the material objects. Because of the long association of the material objects, he forgets his real spiritual activity and is thus misled. The entire world is going on being misled by so-called scientists and philosophers who have no knowledge of the spirit soul. Next shloka. Akshini nasike asyam iti panchapurakritaah dakshina dakshinakarna uttara chottara smritah paschime ityado dvarau gudam shishnami hochyate.
Two eyes, two nostrils, and a mouth, altogether five, are situated in the front. The right ear is accepted as the southern gate, and the left ear is in the northern gate. The two holes or gates situated in the west are known as the rectum and genital organ.
So the two, we see out of the 9 gates, different gates are in facing different direction. 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, and the mouth are situated in the front. Pancha Purakritah. And then one ear is in the southern side, another in the northern side. The rectum and genital are in the Paschime, in the eastern side and the western side. Further, Kadyota Virmukhi Chatra Netre Ekatra Nirmite Rupam Vibrajitam Tabhyam Vichashte Chakshusheshwarah.
The two gate name Khadyota and Avirmukhi, which have been spoken of, are the two eyes side by side in one place. The town name Vibrajita should be understood as form. In this way, the two eyes are always engaged in seeing different kind of forms.
So Kadyota and Avirmukhi are the 2 eyes. Netre Dvivachana. Rupam Vibrajitam Tabhyam, the sense object which he sees with the eyes. Like in the Purañjana story, it is explained that he goes to a city called as Vibrajita. The Vibrajita represents the Rupa. Vichashte Chakshusheshwarah. Nalini Nalini Nase Gandha Saurabha Uchyate Ghrano Vaduto Mukyasyam Vipano Vagrasa Vidrasaha.
The two doors named Nalini and Nalini should be known as the two nostrils, and the city named Saurabha represents aroma. The companion spoken of as Avadhuta is the sense of smell. The door called Mukhya is the mouth, and Vipana is the faculty of speech. Rasatnya is the sense of taste.
So Nalini, Nalini, Nase. 2 nostrils. And he goes to a city called as Saurabha, that refers to the fragrance. Grano Vaduto Mukyasyam. Vipano Vag Rasavid Rasaha. And when he's going to the city of Saurabha, he has a companion called as Avaduta, which is the sense of smell. And Mukhya is the mouth, and Vipana is the faculty of speech. So Prabhupada says Avaduta means most free. A person who is not under the rules and regulations of any injunction, when he has attained that stage, that is the stage of Avaduta. He can act as he likes. For Avaduta, there are different meanings given in elsewhere in the Chaitanya Bhagavata. The Chaitanya Bhagavata Madhya Kanda 8.11. 3 meanings are given for, other meanings are also given for Avaduta. A person who is completely devoid of bodily urges and who appears like inert matter. Another meaning is that one who is fully detached from the pride of identifying with his belly and genitals. Another meaning is a yogi who follows the principles of strict celibacy, who is aloof from the principles of varna, and who is always engaged in contemplating the super soul. He is called an avaduta. So here Prabhupada is giving this meaning. One who is not under the rules and regulations of any injunction. So just as the air or wind cannot be checked by anyone, the two nostrils situated in one place enjoy the sense of smell without impediment. So avaduta means shaking. It refers to air. Air is used in breathing, which is performed with the nose also. Therefore, the nose is called avaduta. Next shloka. Apano vyavaharotra chitramando bahudanam pitruhur dakshinakarna uttaro devahu smritah.
The city called Apana represents engagement of the tongue in speech, and Bahudana is the variety of footsteps. The right ear is called the gate of Pitru, and the left ear is called the gate of Devahu.
So the right ear is called the gate of Pitruh, by which a person goes to Pitruloka. Left ear is called the gate of Devahu. A person goes to Devaloka. So Apana represents the engagement of the tongue in speech. Pravrittam cha nivrittam cha Shastram Panchala Samyitam Pitriyanam Devayanam Shrotrad Shrutadarad Vrajet.
Narada Muni continued, the city spoken of as Dakshina Panchala represents the scriptures meant for directing pravriti, the process of sense enjoyment in fruitive activities.
Dakshina Panchala refers to the scriptures for which we talk about the Pravritti Marga, and the Uttara Panchala refers to scriptures of Nivritti Marga. So the living entities are promoted to Pitruloka or Devaloka by hearing these scriptures. So Karma Kanda, and Prabhupada will speak about that in the next. So simply by the process of hearing, one can also be promoted to the different planets. It can be Vaikuntha or Pitruloka. We'll take one more shloka and then we'll take a break. Asuri Medra Marvagdvar Vyavayo Graminamratihi Upasto Durmada Prokto Nirtir Gudavuchyate.
The city called Gramak, which is approached the lower gate of Asuri, the genital is meant for sex, which is very pleasing to common men who are simply fools and rascals. The faculty of procreation is called Durmad, and the rectum is called Nirti.
So Gramaka is approached the lower gate of Asuri, the genital, is meant for sex. Here particularly it is mentioned that Vyavayo Graminam Ratihi. Graminam Ratihi. This is something very pleasing for the worldly people. Upastaha. Upa means near. Samipa. Upastaha means situated in the nearby. So upasto durmada prokto nirtir guda uchyate. So upasta refers to the faculty of procreation. Durmada refers to the upasta, that means the genitals, the faculty of procreation. And niriti refers to the guda, the rectum. So we'll go through this section. We'll go through the purport in the next session. Hare Krishna.
Roji, does this ghostly bodies come into 84 lakh of species?
Ghostly bodies. You can think so. Ghostly body also. And that
They are not human being. They are not Manushya. They, ah,
okay. Start. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashlalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Parshatleshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavranda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. Asuri Medra Marvagdwar Vyavayo Graminam Ratihi Upasto Durmada Prokto Nirtir Guda Uchyate. The city called Gramaka, which is approached to the lower gate of Asuri, is meant for sex, which is very pleasing to the common man who are simply fools and rascals. The faculty of procreation is called Durmada, and the rectum is called Nirti. So Prabhupada writes a strong purport. So when the world becomes degraded, rectum and genital are taken very seriously as the centers of all activity. Even in Vrindavan, unintelligent men pass off this rectal and genital business as spiritual activity. Such people are called sahajiyas. According to their philosophy, through sexual intelligence, one can elevate oneself to the spiritual platform. So there is a about the Sahajiyas. Sometimes Prabhupada speaks about the Sahajiyas. Like we may not have, in the current time, we may not have encountered many Sahajiyas actually. But a few centuries back, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement was going on, there were many people in Vrindavan or Mayapur. The Gaudiya Sampradaya was infested with the Sahajiyas actually. So about that, Vivekananda mentions in his book. I will just read that quotation about the presence of the Sahajiyas in the Chaitanya Sampradaya. Where did I write it actually? Somewhere. So in Swami Vivekananda mentions, we can see that what was prevalent at that time. Sri Chaitanya was a man of tremendous renunciation and had nothing to do with women and carnal appetites. But in later times, his followers admitted women into their order, mixed indiscriminately with them in his name, and made an awful mess of the whole thing. And the ideal of love which the Lord exemplified in his life was perfectly selfless and bereft of any vestige of lust. But that sexless love can never be the property of the masses. But the subsequent Vaishnava gurus, instead of laying particular stress first on the aspect of renunciation in the master's life, bestowed all their zeal on preaching and infusing his ideal of love among the masses. And the consequence was that the common people could not grasp and assimilate that high ideal of divine love, and naturally made of it the worst form of love between man and woman. So he mentions about the presence of the Sahajiyas at that time. So Prabhupada is writing here in this purport. So to rectify these rascals and fools is very difficult. After all, the sex desires of the common man are condemned in these verses. And then Prabhupada says that such people who engage in illicit sex in Vrindavan, for them, the only shelter is also Vrindavan. They will actually, even from the ordinary point of view, the Sahajiyas nonetheless pass themselves up as devotees. For this reason, Vrindavan is no longer visited by intelligent men. Sometimes we are asked why we have made our center in Vrindavan. So from the external point of view, Vrindavan might have degraded with Sahaji activities, but from a spiritual point of view, Vrindavan is the only place where all these people can be rectified. So such people will take birth in Vrindavan as the, say, dogs or animals in Vrindavan. And in that way, they will be elevated in the next life. So we see that this particular shloka especially is talking about the few shlokas I will just quote about the Upastha Vegam, because this verse is about the Upastha Vegam. There is a nice Subhashita which says that Ekam Vastu Dvida Kartum Bhagavaha Santi Dhanvinaha Jayat Ekasmaro Dhanvi Dvayor Aikyam Karotiya. There are many expert bowmen in this world capable of splitting an object into two using their sharp arrows. But all glories, however, to that expert bowman named Cupid, who unites two into one through his arrows. So Cupid is the only person who unites the two people with his arrow. All other people is a more figurative way of saying that about the power of Kama. There's another shloka in Mahabharata, Hariparshatra was quoting. Mahabharata, yeah. Sir, in Vishnu Puran. Mahabharata. Naham shakyonupayena hantum bhutena kenachit. Yomam prayatate hantum gyatva praharane balam. Tasya tasmin praharane punapradur bhavamyaham. Kama cannot be slain by anyone by any existing means. If a person should seek to slay me, putting the trust in the strength of any means, then I appear in that very means and conquer them instead. Well, it doesn't apply to devotional service, it applies to different other material means. The Kama is so powerful. Kama, when a person tries to conquer Kama with some means, then the Kama appears in that very means which a person uses to conquer him. Next shloka, 15th. Vaishasam nara kampayur lubda kondautu me shrunu hastapadau pumam stabhyam yukto yati karoti cha.
When it
He is accompanied by Lubdaka, which is the working sense in the rectum. Formerly, I have also spoken of two blind associates. These associates should be understood to be the hands and legs. Being held by the hands and legs, the living entity performs all kinds of work and moves hither and thither.
So here, about the rectum it is mentioned. Narada Muni is further describing about the rectum where the person goes. Antapuram cha hridayam vishuchirmana uchyate tatra moham prasadam va harsham prapnoti tadgunaihi.
The word Antapura refers to the heart. The word Vishuchina, meaning going everywhere, indicates the mind. Within the mind, the living entity enjoys the effects of the modes of material nature. These effects sometimes cause illusion, sometimes satisfaction, and sometimes jubilation.
So here, how the living entity experiences different feelings. Illusion, sometimes satisfaction, sometimes jubilation. So the mind and intelligence of the living entity are affected by the modes of material nature, and according to the modes of nature, the mind is habituated to go here and there. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashah ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. So because of the different modes, a person experiences sometimes happiness, sometimes distress, sometimes a mixture of happiness and distress. Yata yata vikriyate gunakto vikaroti va tata tatapo drashtatma tadvrittiranu karyate.
Formally, it was explained that the queen is one's intelligence, while one is awake or asleep. That intelligence creates different situations. Being influenced by contaminated intelligence, the living entity envisions something and simply imitates the action and reactions of his intelligence.
So, the material intelligence, when a person identifies with the material intelligence, how a person simply follows the material intelligence. Although the living entity, since the intelligence is contaminated, the living entity is also contaminated. In the conditioned state, the living entity acts according to contaminated intelligence. Although he still remains an observer, but he is forced by the contaminated intelligence, which is really a passive agent. Further, Deho ratastvindriyashva samvatsararayo gatihi dvikarma chakra striguna dvaja panchasu banduraha manorashmir buddhisuto krinido dvandva kubaraha panchendriyartha prakshepa sapta dhatuvarutakaha आकूतिर विक्रमो बाह्यो मृगतृष्णां प्रधावति एकादशेन्द्रियचमु पंचसूना विनोदकृत. So the previous, just before reading this translation, the previous two shlokas, if you remember in the 25th chapter, at the end, the last verses of the 25th chapter, the Narada Muni is explaining the purport of them. 25th chapter end was explained that how the living Purañjana simply started imitating the queen. When the queen dined, he used to dine with her. When she chewed, he used to chew along with her. When the queen sang, he also sang. When she cried, he also cried. So he simply followed the queen. That means Narada Muni is giving the purport to this section in the last two shlokas. That is in the 15, 16, 17. How the living entity simply follows the material intelligence, and because of that he experiences different happiness or miseries or mixed happiness and distress. And the living entity imitates the actions and reactions of his intelligence. This is the purport of those sections. Now this 18th to 28th shloka, in this, the 26th chapter, the Purañjana goes to hunt in the forest. He leaves behind the wife and then he goes to hunt in the forest. The purport of that is explained here. You can read the translation.
Narada Muni continued, what I refer to as the chariot was in actuality the body. The senses are the horses that pull the chariot. As time passes year after year, these horses run without obstruction. But in fact, they make no progress. Pious and impious activities are the two wheels of the chariot. The three modes of material nature are the chariot's flags. The five types of life air constitute the living entity's bondage, and the mind is considered to be the rope. Intelligence is the chariot driver. The heart is a sitting place in the chariot, and the dualities of life, such as pleasure and pains, are the knotting place. The seven elements are the covering of the chariot, and the working senses are the five external processes. The 11 senses are the soldiers, being engrossed in sense enjoyment. The living entity seated on the chariot hankers after fulfillment of his false desires and runs after sense enjoyment, life after life.
The 26th chapter, there is elaborate description of the chariot, the elaborate description of the chariot, and then with the chariot, Purañjana goes to hunt. So Narada Muni is explaining that the chariot refers to the body. Sometimes the living entity gives up the pious sense gratification and he goes to enjoy sense gratification by not following dharma. So Intelligence is the chariot driver, the heart is the sitting place, duality is life for the noting place. So the living entity attains a certain position in life in a particular type of body according to pious and impious activities. But people think that transmigration of the body, of the soul from one material body to another body, that we will consider that to be the progress. But that is nothing but one is traveling within the different cells, within different prison cells in the material world. The real progress is getting out of the prison house. Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna. So being illusioned, he's thinking that he's making progress, but he's like an airplane encircling the earth day and night, incapable of leaving the gravitational field. So here also in the shloka, Mrigatrishnam upadavati. Mrigatrishnam pradavati. The living entity is running after the water and the mirage. Kvaham, no, Vedam Kalevara Rujam. The shloka 7.9.25. Kutrashisho Shutisukha Mrigatrishni. Kutrashisho Shutisukha Mrigatrishni Rupam. Vedam Kalevaram Ashesha Rujam Virohaha. Nirvidyate Natujano Yadapiti Vidwan. Kamanalam Madulavai Shamayan Durapai. So Kutra, Shisha, Shruti, Sukha, Mrigatrishni Rupa. The happiness which is there either in this world or in the higher planets is like a Mrigatrishni Rupa. It's like a water and the mirage. Vedam Kalevara Rusham. So this body is a place which gives so many diseases actually. Vedam Kalevara Rusham. Nirvidyate Natujano Yadapiti Vidwan Kamanalam Madulavai Shamayan Darapai. There is a blazing fire of Kama. But Madulavai, by trying to experience little happiness, a person is trying to extinguish this blazing fire of Kama. So this, so the living entity is, by using the chariot of the body, he is trying to enjoy. So Prabhupada says that Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, Kevala Vishera Banda, Amrita Boliya Yeba, Kaya, Nana Yoni Sadafire, Kadarya Bhakshana Kare, Tara Janma Ada Pate Yaya. So the Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda, they are considered to be the parts of poison. They are considered to be the parts of poison. So being fixed in Krishna consciousness, one can become free from the entanglement of birth and death and the vain struggle for existence. In these verses, the words Mrigatrishnam Pradavati are very significant because the living entity is influenced by a thirst for sense enjoyment. He is like a deer that goes to the desert to search out the water. In a desert, an animal simply searches in vain for water, but of course there is no water in the desert. Further. So then we see in the 26th or 27th chapter, this attack by Chandavega. The Purañjana, he comes back home and then later how he's attacked by the old age, how he's attacked by the time factor. So that attack by Chandavega, that chapter, the meaning behind the chapter is explained by Narada Muni in the next few shlokas. Samvatsaras Chandavega Kalo Yenopalakshitaha Tasyahaniha Gandharva Gandharvyo Ratra Yasmritaha Harantyayup Parikrantya Shashtyuttarashatatrayam.
What was previously explained as Chandavega, powerful time, is covered by days and nights, named Gandharvas and Gandharvis. The body's lifespan is gradually reduced by the passage of days and nights, which number 360.
The Chandavega is covered by days and nights, named Gandharvas and Gandharvis. So, a person has 360 days in the life. Those 360 days are the soldiers of Chandavega. It's also explained. How the time destroys everything. So, life's progress is taken for the unnecessary labor required to cover these 360 days and nights of time. And the next shloka, Narada explains the Kala Kanya and the Yavana. Kala Kanya represents the old age and Yavana represents the death. Kala Kanya Jara Sakshat Lokastam Na Abhinandati. Kala Kanya is the old age. Nobody desires that old age. Swasaram Jagrihe Mrityum Kshayaya Yavaneshwaraha. So, Yavanaraj accepted Kala Kanya as his sister. This Yavanaraj represents the death. So before going to the place of Yamaraja, the living entity accepts old age. One is subjected to the influence of Yavanaraja and his sister due to impious activity. But Prabhupada says that if a person follows the instructions of Narada Muni, if one is Krishna conscious, one will not be affected by the symptoms of old age. Elsewhere, I think the 27th chapter, it's also explained that death accepts old age as a sister for destroying the people. Or he accepted her as a sister for his own destruction. Because she came in the family of Adharma, he became her husband, though she was her sister. So, but the old age is merciful to the Vaishnavas. By the order of Narada, she helps them surpass death. By the order of Narada, she helps them surpass death. So, a few weeks back, I had gone to Badrik Ashram. So, Badri Narayana, Lord Badri Vishal, Badri Narayana deity is there. In the Sri Sampradaya, Tirumangai Alvar has written 20 songs in glorification of Badri Narayana. The theme of each song is that half of the song he describes in minute detail the symptoms of old age. In half of the song. In each song he describes the different symptoms. Very graphically he describes. A person in old age, he is keeping one hand in the back, and then he becomes hunchbacked, and another hand is holding the stick. And then he's walking with a great struggle. Putting one step is like a great effort. And while walking, he's also he's having a cough and other things. And then there are different people who are making fun of this old person. And he describes the symptoms of old age. And then he says that before this stage comes, let us go to Badrinath and take darshan of Badri Narayana. That's the theme of each song. Before half the song he describes the symptoms of old age, and then he says, before this stage comes, let us go to Badrinath, where that Krishna who killed Putana by sucking her poison, he has now appeared as Badri Narayan. Or in different ways he describes. So here Prabhupada is saying that if one is Krishna conscious, he conquers death. After leaving the material body, he does not accept another body. And then next shloka. Adayo vyadayastasya sainika yavanashcharaha bhutopasargashu raya prajvaro dvivido jvarah yevam bahuvidair dukkair daiva bhutatma sambhavaihi क्लिश्यमाणः शतं वर्षं देहे देहीतमोवृतः प्राणेन्द्रियमनोधर्मान् आत्मन्यद्यस्य निर्गुणः शेते कामलवान् ध्यायन् ममाहम् इति कर्मकृत्. Somebody read.
The followers of Yavaneshwar Yamraj are called the soldiers of death, and they are known as the various types of disturbances that pertain to the body and mind. Prajvara represents the two types of fever, extreme heat and extreme cold, typhoid and pneumonia. The living entity lying down within the body is disturbed by many tribulations pertaining to providence, to other living entities, and to his own body and mind. Despite all kinds of tribulations, the living entity, subjected to the necessities of body, mind, and senses, and suffering from various types of disease, is carried away by many plans due to his lust to enjoy the world. Although transcendental to this material existence, the living entity, out of ignorance, accepts all these material miseries under the pretext of false egoism, I and mine. In this way, he lives for 100 years within his body.
So the living entity lying down within the body is disturbed by many tribulations. So the different in the old age, a person is attacked by two kinds of fever: prajvara, extreme heat, and extreme cold. Prabhupada says that they can be compared to pneumonia and typhoid. And there are other miseries: adi bhautika, adhyatmika, and adi daivika. And many diseases come because of imbalance of kapha, vata, and pitta. So knowing the basic misery of material existence, one should be induced to get out of the material clutches and return home back to Godhead. So actually the living entity is not at all happy in this world. Because of the body, he suffers thirst and hunger and is influenced by the mind. So in the Isopanishad purport also, Prabhupada says that an intelligent person, as soon as he first experiences some miseries in this world, he immediately plans to get out of this world. There is a man who had 4 daughters. All of them got married, and for Deepavali, all the daughters and the son-in-laws came. Diwali got over, 1 week got over, 2 weeks got over, but all the son-in-laws, they continue to stay there. Then the man got frustrated. Why they are not leaving? Then one day, every day he would go before the meals. Prasadam is ready, you can come. Like that he would say. So one day he went in the morning. He did not invite them. Breakfast is ready, you can come. Like that he didn't invite. Immediately the first person, oh, I think I'm no longer wanted here. Then immediately he packed up and then he went with the left the family. But the other 3, they continued to stay. Then after a few days, he served the previous day's dinner in the morning. The second son-in-law thought, I think this is too much. How can we take the previous day's food? Then he packed up and left. And then the other 2 continued to stay. After a few days, he served the 2 days old dinner in the morning. Then he said, oh, this is too much. This is too much spoiled. How can he feed him? How can he feed this? The third son-in-law, he went. But the fourth person, but at least we are getting lunch properly. Why should I leave? So he continued to stay there. Then after a few days, he took a broom and then he came to beat this fourth son-in-law. He asked, like, why are you actually beating me? He said, Deepavali got over several days before, but you are still continuing to staying here. And he said, if you had told me, then I would have left long back. Why didn't you tell me? So it's a simple story which says that how an intelligent person, when he gets a first indication, a slight indication, then he immediately leaves. But those who are less intelligent, they go through repeated experience, or then only they make a decision. So with this, till the 25th shloka, Narada Muni has completed giving the meaning behind this allegory. Now from 26th to 31st shloka, Narada Muni speaks the philosophy behind the story. Till 25th shloka, he describes what the different characters in the story represent what. Now he gives the philosophical point behind the story. The philosophical point is how the jiva transmigrates from one species to another species because of his desire to enjoy. Yadatmanama vigyaya bhagavantam param gurum purushastu vishajjeta guneshu prakrite swadrik gunabhimani satada karmani kurute vashah shuklam krishnam lohitam va yata karma bijayate.
The living entity by nature has minute independence to choose his own good and bad fortune. But when he forgets his supreme master, the personality of Godhead, he gives himself up unto the modes of material nature. Being influenced by the modes of material nature, he identifies himself with the body and for the interest of the body becomes attached to various activities. Sometimes he is under the influence of modes of ignorance, sometimes the mode of passion, and sometimes the mode of goodness. The living entity thus gets different types of bodies under the modes of material nature.
So when the Jivatma, who is Swadrik, Prabhupada comments that means the living entity has an intelligence, has an independence. But when the living entity Yada Atmanam Avijnaya Bhagavantam Param Gurum, when he forgets the Supreme Lord, Bhagavan, who is the Param Guru, the Supreme Guru, Purushastu Guneshu Vishajjeta, when he identifies with the gunas, when he becomes attached to the gunas, Prakritehe Guneshu Vishajjeta, Guna Abhimani Satada, he identifies himself with the gunas. So at that time, what does he do? Karmani Kurute Vashaha. Vashaha, coming under the control of those gunas, he performs the different karmas. Shuklam Krishnam Lohitam Va Yata Karma Bijayate. And he performs actions in Sattva, Raja or Tamo Guna and takes birth according to his actions. Yata karma abhijayate. So here we see that Purusha prakritistohi bhunkte prakritijan gunan karanam gunasangasya sadasat yoni janmashu. So the living entity, how it transmigrates in different bodies by following the material nature. So Swadrik means one who can see his own welfare. That means he has a minute independence, but he can be misled in his choice. A servant may desire to start his own business and imitate his master. But when he chooses to do so, he may leave the protection of his master. So in this world, we have different competitive exams where a person competes with lakhs of people. But the living entity in the material world, he's trying to literally compete with the Supreme Lord, and he has crores of competitors. In ordinary competitive exam itself, you become tired actually. So much of intense competition. But in this competition, to imitate the Supreme Lord, there are literally unlimited competitors. There are many competitors out to attain the Lord's position, but to become like the Lord is not at all possible. In the competitive exam, at least, you know the technique, you can crack the exam. It is possible to get the first rank or second rank or come within first 50. It is possible to get. But in this competition, to become God, to enjoy like God, literally the passing rate is zero actually. The passing rate is zero, but the people who are competing are infinite, ananta. Although there is no passing rate, but infinite people are competing. And the Lord is also imitated by the Mayavadi philosophers who try to become one with the Lord in an artificial way. When the Mayavadi philosophers think of themselves as liberated, they are under the mental delusion of mental concoction. So no one can become one with or equal to God. Next shloka. Shuklat prakasha bhuyishtal lokan apnoti karhichit dukkodarkan kriyayasams tamash shokotkatan kvachit.
Those who are situated in the mode of goodness act piously according to Vedic injunctions. Thus, they are elevated to the higher planetary systems where the demigods live. Those who are influenced by the mode of passion engage in various types of productive activities in the planetary systems where human beings live. Similarly, those influenced by the mode of darkness are subjected to various types of misery and live in the animal kingdom.
This is like similar to this Prabhupada quoting that Urdhvam gachanti sattvastha madhye tishtanti rajasa jaganya guna vrittistha adho gachanti tamasa. Similar to that. By actions in sattva guna, a person attains the planets illuminated by knowledge. Shuklat prakasha bhuyishtal lokan apnoti karhichit. Dukkodarkan kriya yasam. Sometimes he attains planets whose final result is sufferings. Dukkha udarkan. And tama shokotkatan kvachit. Sometimes he attains planets filled with ignorance and lamentation. So in the purport, Prabhupada says how the passion and ignorance are so prominent. At the present moment, human society is overly influenced by passion and ignorance. Passion. Consequently, people are engaged in working in big factories. They forget how distressful it is to live in such places. Elsewhere in the Bhagavatam, second canto, Prabhupada says that manufacture of the necessities of life, within quotes, manufacturing of the so-called necessities of life in factories and workshops, excessively prominent in the age of Kali or in the age of machine, is the summit stage of the quality of darkness. इसके ऊपर तमोगुण का कुछ है ही नहीं एक्चुअली. Practically speaking, like most of the industry, this one, what we are manufacturing, which are not needed, and that which is really required, people who are manufacturing are going down actually. What is really required? We are requiring grains and milk, vegetables, grains and milk. People who are growing vegetables, grains and maintaining the cows, that is decreasing. So recently this Tirupati Laddu controversy came actually. So from one point of view, it is too obvious that Laddu is definitely contaminated. Because if you take a survey of the population, if you take the survey of the population of India, say 60 years back or 80 years back, what was the population at that time and what is the population now? Population of the humans and population of the cows. Population of the cows were previously much more. If you go to even a smaller town or this one, you can easily see some bullock cart cows going here and there. Population of the cows were much more, and population of the humans were much less. And now the population of the humans have come to 140 crore, and population of the cows have decreased enormously. But still the milk is available everywhere. Ghee is available everywhere. People who are maintaining the cows are people who, most of the people, when you go doing youth preaching, most of the boys, if you inquire, many people are sons of the farmers. They're engineers or doctors. So most of them are leaving their Swadharma. Cow population is reducing. So many cows are getting slaughtered. People who are maintaining the cows are reducing. And human population has increased. And nowadays previously people would eat sweets and all little, not so frequently. Now so much of demand for the fruits, sweets, so many sweet shops are there. And ghee, milk are available everywhere. So from where it is coming actually? So it is too obvious that ghee and milk are contaminated. And practically speaking, if you see pure ghee, if you have to get 1 kilo, it will come 2,500. 2,000 to 2,500 minimum. But still, so much of ghee and so much of laddu, everything is available. They say ghee. So there is no doubt that the ghee is contaminated. Only thing you can bargain is that at least don't put animal fat. At least that is the only question. That is the only bargain you can do. So why I am saying is that people, that which Prabhupada calls as sinless occupation, agriculture and cow protection, the sinless occupation, the 8th canto purport he says. But people leave that and they go to factory jobs, which is considered to be the summit of tamoguna. It is considered to be the summit stage of tamoguna. Such manufacturing enterprises by human society are in the mode of darkness because factually there is no necessity for the commodities manufactured. So factually speaking, we have artificially created the need of, say, mobile phone or computers or nuts and bolts, or whatever this thing, artificially created needs. But the real needs are the food grains or milk and ghee. So human society requires food for subsistence, shelter for sleeping, defense for protection. So the needs are therefore artificial, and the pure state of life, there are no such needs. As such, increasing the artificial needs, as is the standard of material civilization, or advancing the economic development of human society, is a sort of engagement in darkness without knowledge. So we see that in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Etam drishtim avashtabhya nashtatmano alpabuddhayah prabhavant ugra karmano shayaya jagato hita. How the demons are engaged in ugra karma to destroy the world. Same thing Prabhupada is paraphrasing. So previously, when we talk about karma mimamsa philosophy, we can see from two angles. Karma mimamsa philosophy, in simple way to summarize, is work is worship. Because another way is that karma mimamsa people just want to go to heavenly planets. But another way of karma mimamsa is work is worship. Perform your work. That itself is worship, your worship. Karma mimamsa, from a transcendental perspective, considering the work as worship is definitely wrong. Work should be performed as a worship of the Lord. Not that you consider work itself as a worship. So there are many pramanas are there. But from a dharmic perspective, karma mimamsa is good, at least a person has an affinity towards his swadharma. Whatever is swadharma, if he is a farmer, or if he is a kshatriya, if he is even a barber, he has at least affinity towards his swadharma. He has a respect towards swadharma. Therefore, he will not leave that swadharma. But the material civilization, it takes a material education, material civilization. It makes a person develop aversion towards one's swadharma. Therefore, people they prefer to take up some IT job, or they prefer to study artificial intelligence and data science than do some dharmic occupation, actually. So from one point of view, karma mimamsa is good, because at least it makes a person develop affinity towards the swadharma. But one should not remain at that place thinking that swadharma to be that itself as a worship of the Lord. It has to go beyond that. So that in this, because Prachina Parishat was one sense, you are just attached to the karma mimamsa. You are just attached to the fruitive activities. So Narada Muni is elevating Prachina Parishat to the devotional service. So Prabhupada explains that those who utilize the energies of the worker are called the capitalists, and those who actually perform the work are the laborers. In actuality, they are both capitalists, and the workers are in passion and ignorance. The result is that there is always a distressful situation. In contrast to these men are those influenced by the Sattva Guna, the Karmis and Jnanis. The Karmis, under the direction of Vedic instructions, try to elevate themselves to higher planets. At least the Karmis are higher than these factory workers. And the Jnanis are even higher than the Karmis. They try to merge into Brahman. But from transcendental point of view, all the classes of living entities in various species of life are existing within the material world. This explains the superior and inferior life forms within the material world. Next. Kvachit puman kvachitcha stri. Kvachit nobaya mandadihi. Devo manushya striyagva. Yata karma gunam bhavaha.
Covered by the mode of ignorance in the material nature, the living entity is sometimes a male, sometimes a female, sometimes a eunuch, sometimes a human being, sometimes a demigod, sometimes a bird, an animal, and so on. In this way, he is wandering within the material world. His acceptance of different types of bodies is brought about by his activities under the influence of modes of nature.
So now Narada is explaining that chapter. Purañjana becomes a woman in the next slide. That is 28, na? That is 28th chapter. 28th only, na? Becomes a woman. So the foolish jiva is sometimes a man, sometimes a woman. Sometimes is a eunuch. Kvachit no bayam andadihi. Sometimes is a devata. Sometimes is a human or an animal. His birth takes place according to the gunas and his actions. Yatha karma gunam bhavaha. So again, Prabhupada writes how the living entity is never material, and the material conception is simply a mistake due to forgetfulness. When these small particles are covered by the cloud of Maya, they lose their shining capacity. When the cloud of Maya is gone, the particles again become brilliant and shining. Somehow or other, if he comes before the Lord, he can see himself as shining as the Supreme Lord, although he is not as extensive as the Lord. So we cannot imitate the Lord, nor can we become the supreme enjoyer. So from one point of view, every living entity is practically a ghost only. Because when a person is haunted by a ghost, so one may say ghost does not have when a person is haunted by a ghost, one forgets one's identity. So every person in this world is a ghost because he is haunted by the ghost of Maya. And therefore he forgets his constitutional position. Bhukti, mukti, sprihahina, pishachi. The desire for bhukti and desire for mukti, they are compared to the ghost. Because of that, a person forgets one's constitutional position. So when the living entity is covered by Maya, he becomes a so-called scientist, philosopher, politician, or a socialist. And at every moment presents different plans for the benefit of human society. All these plans are ultimately failures because they are illusory. And the solution is that one must come in contact with the Guru. Then he can understand his constitutional position. So Prabhupada mentions the 7 steps. Contact with the Guru. Then next is he understands his constitutional position. Third, becomes disgusted with material existence. Fourth, regrets his past experiences in material existence. Fifth step. And this regret is beneficial, it purifies the Jivatma. And the 6th step, he prays to the Lord to engage in his service. And then 7th step, Krishna grants liberation from the clutches of Maya. The 7 steps are mentioned by Prabhupada in the purport. And the next shloka, Narada Muni gives an example to describe the point mentioned in the previous shloka. You can repeat after me. Kshutparito yatha dina Sarameyo griham griham charan vindati yaddishtam dandam bodanameva va tata kamashayo jiva ucchavachapata brahman uparyado va madhye va yati dishtam priyam.
The living entity is exactly like a dog who, overcome with hunger, goes from door to door for some food. According to his destiny, he sometimes receives punishment and is driven out and at other time receive a little food to eat. Similarly, the living entity, being influenced by so many desires, wanders in different species of life according to destiny. Sometimes he is high and sometimes he is low. Sometimes he goes to the heavenly planet, sometimes to hell, sometimes to the middle planet, and so on.
So, just as a wretched dog afflicted with hunger, Shutparito, Deenar, the wretched dog, wanders from Sarameyo Gruham Gruham Charan Vindati, wanders from house to house, and Yaddishtam, because of providence, Dandam or Vodanam. Sometimes he gets a punishment, Rada punishment, sometimes he Vodanam, he gets a rice, he gets some food. Tata, similarly, Kamashayo Jiva, the living entity full of desires, Ucha Avacha Pata Brahman. Sometimes he goes to higher species, sometimes to lower species. Uparyado va madhyeva yati dishtam priya priyam. He goes to higher, middle, or lower planets. So, the comparison to the dog is very appropriate. Sometimes in Western countries, we hear of a master leaving millions of dollars to a dog in his well. Of course, what Prabhupada wrote at that time, it happens even now in India also. People leave millions of Bombay also. Some time back, I saw in the news that how person wrote a will for the dog. There are many dogs loitering in the street without food. Therefore, to liken the conditioned existence of the living entity to that of a dog is very appropriate. Of course, the dog analogy, one devotee was, when they first went to London, they were giving classes. In the class, he gave some analogy of the dog. It was a little positive analogy. So there are some positive analogies are also there, some negative analogies are also there. But after the lecture, one of the senior devotees told that, please don't quote anything about the dog because it's a very sensitive subject matter. Even if you quote positive, but sometimes, especially negative, because almost everybody's house dog is there. Even deities are there, Shaligram Shila is there, and the dog is also there. Keeping a dog, I'm not against keeping a dog, but in the Vedic culture, dog would be kept outside the house. It would be never brought inside, actually. As long as it is kept outside the house, it is all right. But dogs will be brought inside. That's the Western culture. Mahabharata, I don't have the exact reference, but there's a shloka which I heard. When the dog enters inside the house, the members of the house, they will lose their reverence towards the forefathers. That means when you show more reverence and affection to an entity more than which is required, higher than its position, then the other aspect of is that to whom you should show reverence, the forefathers who gave culture and training, you will actually stop showing the reverence. That means they will stop performing the Shraddha Karya. They'll stop performing Shraddha. So, but of course, here the dog analogy is that how the dog sometimes gets punishment or food. Similarly, living entity sometimes he goes to higher species, sometimes he goes to lower species. And then he says, but the best situation is to become the Krishna's dog or a Vaishnava's dog. Vaishnava Takura Tomara Kukura Baliya Jana. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's song. One should engage in the service of a Vaishnava and try to please him in every respect. Unless one does so, he does not make spiritual advancement. Apart from spiritual advancement in the material world, if one does not develop his qualities in Sattva Guna, he cannot be promoted to the higher planetary system. Next shloka. Duke Shvekatarenapi Daiva Bhutatma Hetushu Jivasya na vyavacheda Syache tattat pratikriya.
The living entities are trying to counteract different miserable conditions pertaining to providence. Other living entities are the body and mind. Still, they must remain conditioned by the laws of nature, despite all attempts to counter these laws.
So now in the 32nd to 35th shloka, Narada Muni explains that how one cannot counteract the miseries by material solutions. And then after explaining that, from 36th shloka, he will explain the real remedy. In 4 shlokas, he explains how by material miseries, material solutions, one cannot counteract the miseries. Yasmat priya viyoga sanyoga janma shokagnina sakala yonishu dahyamanaha dukkaushadam tadapi dukkam atadiyaham bhuman brahmami vadame tavadasya yogam. Prahlad Maharaj says that because of separation from dear ones, separation from the dear ones, and union with those whom we don't like. Sakala yonishu dakhyamana. In all the species I am being burnt with the miseries. And dukkaushadam tadapi dukkam ataddiyaho. Whatever remedy for those dukkha, that creates even more misery. Bhuman brahmami vadame tavadasya yogam. Therefore, I just want to be your servant. Please situate me as your servant. So the material solutions are like, suppose a person was going in the road and they were laying road by putting tar. And then in his leg, some tar got stuck. And in order to remove that tar, he tried to use one hand. Then tar was removed, but then tar came into his hand. Or some tar was left in the leg also, and some tar came into hand. Then he used his another hand to remove the tar. But the other hand also got stuck with the tar. So in that way, the material solutions are like that. So even if there is a dukeshu ekatarena api, even if there is a remedy, dukeshu daiva bhutatma hetush, there is no cessation of even one of the jiva's miseries. Sorry. Syachet tattat pratikriya. Pratikriya means remedy. Yadi tattat pratikriya chet, even if there is a remedy, pratikriya, but dukeshu ekatarena api, Daiva Bhutatma Hetushu. There is no cessation of even one of the Jiva's miseries. Even one of the Jiva's miseries caused by Daiva Bhuta Atma. Adhyatmika, Adibhautika, Adidaivika Klesha. So there is no separation from even one of the three types of misery. So we see this one. For transportation problem, they invented cars. But it is leading to pollution problem. And then petrol is getting depleted. Traffic problem. Ozone layer getting contaminated. Global warming. And then people also they drive the cars and then they use the car for illicit sex, many other things. Breathing problem. So therefore, just like an insect which is put in a spider's net, the more it puts effort, the more strongly it gets bound. So the only solution is that somebody from outside has to cut the net. Similarly, when we try to come out of the laws of nature with a material solution, we become entangled more and more. So only solutions: take shelter of the Guru and let him free us. So Prabhupada, let me see Prabhupada's purport. So how Prabhupada speaks about 30th, na? Tasyaiva heto prayateta kovido nalabhyate yad brahmatam uparyadaha tallabhyate dukkavad anyata sukam kalena sarvatra gabira ramgasa. Therefore, a really intelligent person endeavors for that purposeful end which is not obtainable even by wandering from the topmost planet down to the lowest planet. One should simply try to develop his Krishna consciousness and not waste his time trying to improve his material condition. So the process of improvement means accepting another miserable condition. So there are also other shlokas, similar shlokas. Sukam Aindriyakam Daitya Deha Yogena Dehinam. Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj says that Tat Prayaso na Kartavyo Yata Ayur Vyayak Param Natata Vindate Kshema Mukunda Charanam Bhujam. Endeavors for sense gratification or material happiness through economic development are not to be performed, for they result only in loss of time and energy, with no actual profit. If one's endeavors are directed toward Krishna consciousness, one can surely attain the spiritual platform of self-realization. Next shloka. He gives an example. Yatahi purusho bharam shirasa guru mudvahan tam skandena sa adatte tata sarva pratikriyaha.
A man may carry a burden on his head, and when it feels it to be too heavy, he sometimes gives relief to his head by putting the burden on his shoulder. In this way, he tries to relieve himself of the burden. However, whatever process he devises to counteract the burden does nothing more than put the same burden from one place to another.
So it is like a shifting the burden from the head to the shoulder. So material advancement of civilization means advancement of the reactions of the threefold miseries. So that is the material advancement of civilization. So this is some other purport Prabhupada mentions. Next shloka. Naikantata pratikara karmanam karma kevalam dvayam havidyopasritam swapne swapna ivanaga.
Narada continue, O you who are free from all sinful activity, no one can counteract the effect of fruitive activities simply by manufacturing a different activities devoid of Krishna consciousness. All such activity is due to our ignorance. When we have a troublesome dream, we cannot relieve it with a troublesome hallucination. One can counteract a dream only by awaking. Similarly, our material existence is due to our ignorance and illusion. Unless we awaken to Krishna consciousness, we cannot be relieved of such dreams. For the ultimate solution to all problems, we must awaken to Krishna consciousness.
It's a very elaborate purport within the translation, actually. It's a purport in the translation. Naikantata pratikara. Karmanam karma kevalam. There is no remedy for action by more action. Both the sinful act and the remedial measure take shelter of ignorance. Dvayam hi avidya upasritam. Swapne swapna ivanaga. It is like suppose you are having a troublesome dream. And in order to remove the miseries in the dream, okay, let me dream something else in order to remove that troublesome dream. The real solution is you have to wake up, not that dream another thing, actually. So both the sinful act and the action of atonement take shelter of ignorance. Therefore, Prabhupada says in Nectar of Instruction first, the real prayashchitta is awakening of Krishna consciousness. The 6th canto, 1st chapter. So though the sattva portion of the remedy in Rajoguna destroys the tamo portion of the acts previously committed, the tamas portion of the remedy in the so the remedy, the prayashchitta for a sinful act, that prayashchitta has the sattva-guna aspect, rajoguna aspect, tamoguna aspect. The sattva portion of the prayashchitta destroys the tamoguna aspect of the sinful activity. But then the tamoguna portion consisting of killing the animals by performing an animal sacrifice, that still remains. In a dream, if a son dies and a person grieves, and a person in the same dream on dreams that the son lives and one's grief disappears. And then again the snake bites the son and then again he suffers. But again he dreams that the doctor has cured. But the real solution is that he has to awaken. So fruitive activities cannot be counteracted by other fruitive activities. Troublesome dream cannot be counteracted by another troublesome dream. One has to wake up. Similarly, in order to counteract all fruitive activities, one has to get up to one's constitutional position. So, next shloka. Arte hyavidyamanepi samsmritir na nivartate manasa linga rupena swapne vicharato yata.
Sometimes we suffer because we see a tiger in a dream or a snake in a vision, but actually there is neither a tiger nor a snake. Thus, we create some situation in a subtle form and suffer the consequences. These sufferings cannot be mitigated unless we are awakened from our dream.
Although the suffering does not really exist, avidyamane api. But samsmritir na nivartate, samsara will never cease. As long as the conception of suffering continues, just as the suffering in a dream will never cease for the jiva, wandering about with the covering of the mind, as long as he identifies with the dream. Manasa linga rupena swapne vicharato yata. Although the suffering does not really exist, samsara will never cease because a person is identifying with the dream. So Prabhupada says that Krishna Chakotipad, because happiness and distress are qualities of the body, actually there is no suffering for the jiva who is disassociated from the body. What is the use of trying to destroy suffering that does not exist? So he says that though suffering does not exist for the jiva, but without removing the misconception, the identification of the matter, the material existence will not cease. In a dream, false objects continue to give suffering to the jiva, moving about with the mind, a covering on the jiva until the person wakes up. So therefore Vedas say that tamaso ma jyotirgama. Wake up from this ignorance. So one must learn to tolerate without being disturbed. And then Prabhupada also said the Veda, this understanding cannot be fully realized unless one is engaged in Brahman activities. Simply knowing that Aham Brahmasmi is not sufficient. Aham Brahmasmi, I am different from the material body, I am spiritual and spirit soul. Simply knowing that I am spirit soul, part of the Bhagavan is not sufficient. One has to engage in the Brahman activities, one has to engage in practical devotional service. To get free from the material conditions, one has to take to Krishna consciousness. That is the only remedy. So we see similar thing where Prabhupada speaks about how to engage in practical bhakti. Another place in the Swayambhu Manu's instruction to Dhruva. Tameva mrityum amrutam tata daivam sarvatmanopehi jagat parayanam yasmai balim vishwasrujo haranti gavo yatavai nasi dama yantritaha. Surrender to the Lord who is birth and death, the refuge of the world with your whole being. Unto him the Devatas offer homage like bulls controlled by the ropes tied to their noses. Without surrender, it is difficult to give up ego by jnana alone. So now simply without one may have developed a knowledge, but unless a person has practically surrendered, it is difficult to give up the ego. Therefore, Swayambhu Manu is advising Dhruva Maharaj. And then now from 36 to 41st shloka, he says that Bhakti Yoga is the real remedy, the only remedy to mitigate the miseries. That is described in 6 shlokas, 36 to 41. Atatmanortha bhutasya यतो नर्त परंपरा संस्मृतिस्तद्व्यवच्छेदो भक्त्या परमया गुरौ वासुदेवे भगवती भक्ति योग समाहितः तद्रीचीनेन वैराग्यम ज्ञानं च जनयिष्यति.
The real interest of the living entity is to get out of the nescience that causes him to endure repeated birth and death. The only remedy is to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead through his representative. Unless one renders devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudev, one cannot possibly become completely detached from this material world, nor can he possibly manifest real knowledge.
So for the Jivatma, who is a spiritual entity, from whose ignorance arises the unending succession of miseries, birth after birth. Anartha parampara samsmriti tad vyavachedo. That misery ceases by pure bhakti to the Guru. Bhaktya paramaya gurau. And the stage of prema bhakti completely dedicated to Vasudeva produces complete jnana and vairagya. Sadricinena vairagyam jnanam cha janayishyati. Sadricinena vairagyam jnanam cha janayishyati. How can one stop samsara? Only by bhakti to Guru and Lord. Yasya deve parabhaktir yata deve tata gurau tasyaite katita hyartha prakashante mahatmanah. So at the beginning stage of bhakti, for the jiva dedicated to the highest goal, from whose ignorance arises a succession of obstacles in samsara. The cessation of samsara will take place by devotion to the Guru. This means that there should be bhakti to Guru and to the Lord. So one time Prabhupada was asked that which is the most important shloka out of all the shlokas in the Shastra. So that time Prabhupada quoted this shloka. Sweta Sutra Upanishad shloka. So what is the function of the Guru? Gururna sasyat, swajanona sasyat, pitana sasyat, jananina sasyat, daivam na tatsyan, na patischa na sasyan, namocha yedyat samupeta mrityam. So, and then how by sadhana bhakti one attains prema bhakti, that is explained in 37th and 38th shloka. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Samakitah Sadricinena Vairagyam Jnanam ja Janayishyati. Complete Jnana and Vairagya. Complete Vairagya means a person considers even the moksha sukha to be insignificant. One becomes detached even from the moksha laguta krita. And complete Jnana means a person gets knowledge of the qualities and opulences of the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada's purport. So, Anartho Pashamam Sakshat Bhakti Yogam Adokshaje Lokasya Janato Vidvam Chakre Satvata Samhitam. This verse is also quoted. Anarthas, unwanted things come down from one bodily life to another. To get out of this entanglement, one has to take to the devotional service of the Lord. So, anarthas are like they are so deep rooted. To eradicate them is, suppose we take a photo with a camera. but then you can delete the camera, you can delete the photo. But then what we see in our mind or whatever activities we performed, based on the impressions which are created in the mind, those impressions are not destroyed even after many lifetimes, unless a person takes to bhakti. So muktir hitva, mukti means muktir hitva anyata rupam sarupena vyavastitihi. Next shloka. Function of Vishnu Chakotipat quotes Guru Nasasyat verse Vasudeve Bhagavati. He also quotes the first canto shloka. By sadhana bhakti, one attains prema bhakti. This is explained in verses 37 and 38. 38. Sochirat eva rajarshe syadachyuta katashrayah shrinvata shraddha danasya nityada syadadiyatah.
O best of the kings, one who is faithful, who is always hearing the glories of Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is always engaged in the culture of Krishna consciousness and in hearing the Lord's activities, very soon becomes eligible to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face.
So one who hears and studies with faith very soon attains Bhakti Yoga. Achirat, in the form of the shelter of topics of the Lord to attain prema. Shrinvata Shraddha Danasya, with faith one must hear. Nityadaya Syat Adiyatah. So Narada Muni is addressing this shloka. Anaga word is, no, it's not mentioned. Raja Rishi, he is addressing him as a Raja Rishi, as a saintly king. So he is trying to encourage Prajina Barisha to take to devotional service. So hearing in this verse means three principal activities of bhakti, that is Shravanam, Kirtanam and Smaranam. All three are included in this. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, all three must be included. Next to shloka, very important shloka. Yatra Bhagavata Rajan Sadavo Vishadashaya Bhagavat Gunanu Katana Shravana Vyagrachetasah Tasmin Mahan Mukarita Madhubicharitra Piyusha Shesha Sarita Paritasravanti Thaye Pibantya Vitrusho Nripagada Karnais Thanna Sprushantyashanatrid Bayashoka Moha.
My dear king, in the place where pure devotees live, following the rules and regulations, and thus purely conscious and engaged with great eagerness in hearing and chanting the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in that place, if one gets a chance to hear their constant flow of nectar, which is exactly like the waves of river, one will forget the necessities of life, namely hunger and thirst, and become immune to all kinds of fear, lamentation, and illusion.
So here, Narada, where will this bhakti take place? He explains that. He's emphasizing the association of the devotees. Yatra Bhagavata Rajan, where there are devotees. What kind of devotees? Sadhavo Vishadashaya. pure hearts with proper conduct. Prabhupada's, this one he says that Sadhava Vishadashaya means broad-minded saintly persons. Broad-minded saintly persons. And who are eager to hear Bhagavat Gunanu Katana Shravana Vyagra Chetasaha, who are eager to hear the discussions of the qualities of the Lord. Where there are such devotees, there profuse streams of nectar of the pastimes of the Lord emanating from the mouths of the saintly devotees. Tasmin Makan Mukarita Madhubit Charitra, emanating from the mouths of the saintly devotees. Piyusha Shesha Sarita. Piyusha Shesha. Shesha refers to leftover. That means the Krishna Katha which is emanating from the mouths of the devotees, it is their Mahaprasad. They have released the Krishna Katha in their hearts. And what they have released in their hearts, it is coming out through their mouth. It is their Mahaprasad. To get the Mahaprasad food remnants, that may be possible only for few people present at that place. And the devotees will not be eager to give their Mahaprasad also. But the Mahaprasad in the form of the Krishna Katha spoken by the devotees, that is available for unlimited people. Anybody, unlimited people can hear. So, profuse streams of the nectar of the pastimes of the Lord emanating from the mouths of the saintly devotees. The Mahaprasad of the devotees flow everywhere. And ta ye pibantyavitrushon nripagada karnais. Those who drink that nectar with firm ears, nripa gada karnai, and with a constant thirst, avitrisho, with a constant thirst, such people tan nas prishanti ashana trid bayashoka moha. They will not be affected by hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, and anger. So here Prabhupada, I'll go through some Prabhupada's point. The holy place like Vrindavan, there are many devotees constantly engaged in chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord. If one gets a chance to hear from such a pure devotees, allowing the constant flow of the river of nectar to come from the mouths of pure devotees, then the cultivation of Krishna consciousness becomes very easy. When one is constantly engaged in hearing the glories of the Lord, he certainly rises above the bodily consumption. So, devotee is very eager to hear from the lips of the liberated devotees. As soon as one hears the glories of the Lord from the liberated devotees, he immediately becomes impregnated with Krishna consciousness. Satam prasangan mama virya samvido bhavanti hritkarna rasayana katha tajjoshanat ashvapavarga vartmani shraddha ratir bhakti ranukramishyati. So Krishna Katha is called as a Krishna Rasayanam. Krishna Rasayana Katha. Like many Ayurvedic medicines are called as Rasayana. Here Krishna Katha is called as a Rasayana. So Krishna Katha is pleasing to the ear and appealing to the mind. When we hear from such pure devotees, Shraddha Ratir Bhakti. Shraddha refers to Nishta, Ruti refers to Bhava Bhakti, Bhakti refers to Prema Bhakti. Gradually a person attains these stages. So the secret of success in the cultivation of Krishna consciousness is hearing from the right person. A Krishna conscious person is never disturbed by the bodily necessities, namely eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So, those who drink those rivers, Vishwanath Chakotipat says that in that assembly of great devotees, the great rivers of nectar of topics of the Lord, which are prasada of the great devotees, Shesha, having been tasted by them and which are continually present in the mouths of the great devotees, flow in all the directions. And those who drink those rivers, not being able to neglect even a drop of those rivers, Nripa Gada Karanai, with a, that means like, they don't want to drop a single drop, just like Lord Shiva coming to hear the Bhagavatam discourse, was telling Nandi to go fast, go fast. Nandi became tired. At a certain point, he took the swan carrier and came to that place. Therefore, that place is called as a Hamsa Vahana, because Lord Shiva came in swan because he didn't want to leave out a single point in the Bhagavatam discourse. Nripa Gada Karanai. That means with ears made sturdy to prevent the nectar from flowing out. Such people cannot be touched by hunger, thirst, fear, lamentation, illusion. They do not have a desire for eating, thinking, oh, where is my food today? Since they have been fed by the devotees. So this shloka is quoted by Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur in his Madhurya Kadambini also, when he describes the stage of Ruchi. When he describes the stage of Ruchi. So the symptoms of Ruchi, he says that there are two primary symptoms of the stage of Ruchi. All impediments to chanting and hearing, such as fatigue and hunger, they are no longer visible. And an insatiable appetite for even seemingly insignificant devotional practice awakens in the heart of a person. These are the two symptoms of Ruchi. And for the first symptom, he quotes this shloka. Tasmin makan mukarita madubit charitra piyush rita parita sravanti. And this verse is also quoted by Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. In which connection? Somebody remembers? For Charitra Shravana. For Shravana, he divides into 3-4 categories. Nama Shravana, Guna Shravana, Charitra Shravana. For Charitra Shravana, he quotes the shloka. So devotees at Ruchi are so absorbed in the taste for bhakti that while chanting and hearing about Krishna, they sometimes lose track of who they are. They completely come out of the I and me-centric life. The next shloka, Narada describes who cannot develop attraction for the ocean of the topics of the Lord. Who cannot develop? Those who lack the devotee association. So sometimes like hearing and chanting, especially Radha Gopinath temple, Solnath Radhanath Swami Maharaj, he has created a culture of hearing and chanting. And those who came in contact, that culture is also spread everywhere. But sometimes certain other places, the culture of hearing and chanting is not so much there actually. Literally, sometimes the leaders they are conjuice in regards to hearing and chanting actually. There's conjuice in regards to some Janmashtami program was happening one place. 4-5 hours of program, one different different drama, dance that was going on. Finally, some 10 minutes class was there. So we felt at least Janmashtami you are having, at least, is it not that Krishna Katha, at least, does it not deserve even one hour actually? So sometimes people conduct yatras, but the real heart of the yatra is the hearing and the chanting, kirtan and the Krishna Katha in the holy place actually. That is the real heart of the yatra. That is the, you can say, the real life of the yatra. Although there is sometimes expert management of the yatra, best of the facilities, everything, but there is no Krishna Katha sometimes in the holy place. It is like you are sitting for food, for serving. Paneer sabji has come, other sabji has come, 4-5 varieties of sabji have come, chutney has come, dal aa gaya, but still you are waiting. When are you going to bring chapati? A chapati or rice. So that is like the main meal. Even if we have many sabjis, but if you don't have the roti, or if you don't have rice, you can't simply eat only the sabjis actually. On the other hand, okay, you can make only one sabji. Just make one sabji dal, but the main course is the rice or the chapati. If that is there, still the meal is complete. But if the main course, dal and chapati, rice and chapati are not there, but you have many sabjis, still the meal is incomplete only. So similarly, if a person has made best of the arrangements of the yatra, best of the arrangements for Janmashtami, but if the main course, the rice is not there, Krishna Katha is not there, because by Shravanam only we get the right attitude to approach all the other processes of bhakti. Therefore, the Shravanam comes much before all the processes. So sometimes when you go to other places, that Shravanam is not given much priority. Because of that, there is constant fighting and so much of quarrel happens. So here in this shloka, Narada Muni is emphasizing the Shravana. Yetair upadrato nityam jivaloka svabhavajaihi na karoti harernunam katam mritanidauratim.
Because the conditioned soul is always disturbed by the bodily necessities such as hunger and thirst, he has very little time to cultivate attachment to hearing the nectarian words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Yeah, one more, the previous shloka, Krishna Chakotipat also quotes the Dhruva Maharaj's prayer, Tena smarant yatitaram priyamisha martyam yechan vada sutta suhrut grihavitta dara ye tvabja naba bhavadiya padaravinda saugandha lubdha hridayeshu krita prasanga. How when a person becomes attached to devotees, one loses attachment to other things. Yetair upadrito nityam jiva loka swabhavajai na karoti harer nunam katamrita nidauratim. So here, those who are constantly disturbed by habitual hunger. Upadrito nityam. Habitual hunger, thirst, fear, lamentation, and illusion. Etaihi refers to the previous 5 things mentioned in the previous shloka: hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, and fear. Such people can never develop attraction for the ocean of the nectar of topics concerning the Lord. Jiva loka swabhava jaihi na karoti harer nunam katamrita nidauratim. So bhakti will rarely blossom in those afflicted by hunger, thirst, and fear because they lack absorption in the rasa, caused by habitual lack of enthusiasm for thinking about the topics of the Lord due to lack of devotee association. So Sahajiyas, so here Prabhupada also mentions, again he speaks about the Sahajiyas. We therefore see that devotees known as Sahajiya, who make everything very easy, do not associate with the advanced devotees. Such persons, in the name of devotional activities, are addicted to all kinds of sinful acts. And there are many so-called devotees passing themselves off as devotees while engaging in these sinful activities. In other words, one is influenced by sinful activity cannot be accepted as a person in Krishna consciousness. A person addicted to sinful life cannot develop Krishna consciousness as indicated in this verse. So, Sahajiyas do not like to associate with advanced devotees and they try to make everything easy. Sahajiyas basically they want salary without work. When you have to get realization, one has to dedicate. One has to, only when a person commits, then a person can get realization. When a person shows a lifelong dedication and commitment, then a person can get realization. But people who want realization without commitment and dedication, people who want experience of ecstasy but without commitment and dedication to the practice of bhakti, that is the Sahajiyas. They cultivate Krishna consciousness in a solitary place, do not like to associate with the advanced devotees, and they indulge in sinful acts. So even Raghunath Das Goswami, he says that without association of devotees, Radha Kunda appears like a Naraka Kunda and Govardhan appears like a python. So we stop here. 3:10, we'll stop here. We'll continue from 42nd shloka. Hopefully we'll complete this chapter tomorrow. Anybody has any questions? Comments also they can share. Okay, if there are no questions, then we'll stop here. Thank you very much. ग्रंथरा श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, गौर भक्त वृंद की जय.